I never thought I'd be so grateful to talk about planning in all my life. So you're absolutely right, Nigel. You hit the nail completely on the head. And a piece of work I'd started to do literally about a month before the election was called. I took Councillor Linda Hartford down, who is our portfolio holder, our cabinet member for housing for South Cambs. I took her down to meet Gavin Barwell, the housing minister. And that's exactly what we're talking about. And I just started, before the election was called, working with other MPs in similar constituencies to ours, so Oxford, Milton Keynes, Bicester. There's some other high growth areas out there where they have in their plan got the solution. They have got, for us it's Northstowe, it's West Cambourne, etc., the right answer to where we want the building to go. But of course, because it's slow coming forward and we're waiting for our local plan to be signed off, we're in this period of limbo and vulnerability. And what the housing minister said to me was that areas like ours, Oxford, Milton Keynes, etc., Bicester, we should be exempt from that. Where you're in an area where you are showing positive growth and you accept it and you're planning well for it, give us a break. Let us be exempt from that 5-year land supply, and that's exactly the conversation I was in the middle of having with the housing minister when the election was called. So if I'm re-elected, then I'll literally just pick that up and carry on with it.
Okay, Dan, Susan's busy rising. Let's go with Dan. We'll come back to Susan in a moment.
Thank you, Nigel. Really very poignant. And actually, just before I answer that direct question, the fact that services are woefully behind the development is also a massive problem. Where we have, I mean, Cambourne's the example, I think, and it's getting better now. But we had a situation where the services just were not there for the new families coming in, and the NHS provision was not there for the sorts of people living there, like young families. So yes, that's part of this bigger issue as well. Sorry, there we go. I'll say all that again. No. Now, the next point then about development itself. Development is a good thing, but this is where I think the free market is going wrong, because it's trying to develop the biggest, most expensive houses. And so houses on average are 350,000 up that are being built at the moment. Where's the affordable housing? Where's the social housing as well? Now there's one thing about this housing stock policy that I quite liked in the past, and that's the fact that we used to be quite proud to have communities made up of different aspects of everybody. And we used to want to say that it's actually a right to have a home to live in. And at the moment it's become an asset which is not even owned by somebody who necessarily lives there. I know planners in London who have a real problem whereby there are flats being bought up by foreign investors who don't live there. They just keep it as an asset to sell on one day. And that's despicable. And that's because the regulation's gone back and the free market's gone crazy. And it means that people like you and I are then forced out of the market. So we've got to really look at that issue as well, to realise we are one society here. We're not all millionaires, we're not all business people. We're a mixture of everyone, and housing should be there for everyone as well. Thank you.
Susan.
Thank you. It's frustrating that the Conservatives have such absolute control locally and nationally on this as our representatives, and have not been able to unlock the local plan. It has been suspended for a long time. We're losing track of how long. And during this time, as Nigel pointed out, villages are going to become blighted by development that is unplanned and not aligned to strategic infrastructure. Also, the council itself, the planning department is under absolute unbelievable pressure. Local councils are not funded properly and can't function properly. The plans are now going through at such a fast rate without really being scrutinized, and we are not getting the level of affordable housing within approved developments that we desperately need. So the spotlight has been thrown on all sorts of things, and I would plead with whoever's in charge next to please fund our local councils properly, because when these speculative applications come along, we discover that we don't have any wriggle room whatsoever to deal with things like roads and schools, school places that the developer is not going to fund, frankly. So it's a terrible situation, and we really do need leadership from those who are in charge.
And finally, Simon.
The other issue is the democratic deficit. And what's happening here, as Nigel's pointed out, is that the decisions that affect us all in our villages are slowly being taken away from us in our villages. They're being moved further and further away. The district council is having another cut of the number of elected councillors. The county council is having a cut of the elected councillors. We are losing our representation. And so it is increasingly difficult for us as local people to say, actually, hold on, we don't want that here, we don't want that here, but we wouldn't mind it there, because those decisions are no longer local decisions. And so there are two main problems. There's that democratic deficit, and there's the funding issue, which Susan rightly points out is having a crippling effect on local authorities. So trying to come up with a decent plan is increasingly difficult for the officers, and it's increasingly difficult for the officers because they aren't given the political leadership that they need to make a decent job of it. Because we do not have that leadership, because the councillors are being taken away, whatever colour they may be, and obviously, from my perspective, I think any council that had a broader representation of us out here, so it wasn't just the majority blue with a few orange thrown in for good measure, there should be a broad number of people with broadly different views, all there trying to make a difference for us locally. Affordable housing is the other thing I'd like to mention in relation to the housing crisis, because there is a huge nightmare happening in every village. I have a 15-year-old son and a 13-year-old daughter, and I have no idea how either of them will be able to afford to get on the housing ladder in Bassingbourn. The bottom of the market now is somewhere in the region of £300,000. So, yeah, and going up quickly, you're absolutely right, sir. So there has to be a serious look at how we provide affordable housing for all of our children. And I'm glad to hear that Dan is now saying let's get back to council housing, because unfortunately the Labour Party sold off 110,000 during their reign. So it's not just the Tories that have done this. This has happened over a long period of time, and it needs to be reversed. And we need to find a proper solution. And the Green Party solution to that is making sure that the councils are able to build council housing again, but we are also able to build houses through local co-ops, local housing associations, which will retain that affordability forever. And it won't just be affordability for one person who then sells it into a market, which is where we're ending up at the moment. So we need to make a absolute concerted effort on affordable housing, but we also need to be aware of what's happening to our local democracy and the structures around it.
Thanks very much, Simon.